Hello, my name's Sarah. I'm one of the physios from COPE, and this is the talk that we give on the pain management program called Pacing. And what we're going to talk about today is what is pacing, and that involves activities. These are all the things that we do with our time, the things we have to do, the things we'd like to do more of or less of, and the things we'd like to start doing or to restart doing. So what we're going to talk about is what is pacing, and then having a think about what might be some of the tweaks and techniques of pacing that you may find helpful. What makes pacing difficult? What are the barriers? And then you will have a chance to score yourself on your pacing and to pick one strategy to practice this week. It's really important, though, to say that there's no such thing as perfect pacing. We are not robots. We are people living lives that have demands on us, not all of which are within our control. But what we're looking at with pacing is how can things be brought into balance, remembering those circles of threat, soothing, and the drive system. We're trying to bring those systems into balance. And we're trying to take away this roller coaster often of activity levels that people find themselves caught up in for very understandable reasons. So when we meet with people, we ask them what sort of habits they've got into. How do they go about getting the things done in their life that they need to? And if you look at this graph, you can see on the left-hand side, the axis is the amount of activity, and on the bottom, that's plotting time going by. And this is often referred to as a boom-bust cycle or an over and under activity cycle. And we ask people what they tend to do when it's a better day pain-wise. And frequently people answer words like the chores, household tasks, gardening, shopping, cleaning. And we quickly realise that often on a better day, pain-wise, that's when we get the things done that we actually don't really enjoy, but they become our priority. And many people suddenly realize that actually the things that bring them pleasure, the things that produce those feel good hormones and chemicals, they're the things that tend to get pushed. So on a better day, pain wise, people acknowledge they might start doing those household chores. It doesn't take long before pain levels increase. They often tend to push themselves on to keep going, but at a certain point, you can see the peak of this graph. Pain pulls them up. And then the other side of this pushing on is often a period of downtime, a time of recovery, restoring yourself. And then it's a better day, pain-wise, and people say they do exactly the same thing. Go back to those tasks, push themselves through, crash the other side. And this is a very, very common thing that we see at COPE. It might be you. Now, this might be you pushing yourself through each day and the crashing each evening. It might be you pushing through all week and crashing at the weekend. But what is important to say is that boom bust isn't wrong or harmful. There are lots of people who live a boom bust life. Let's take a teacher, for example, pushes during the term, crashes in the holidays. It's very common, the Monday to Friday worker pushing hard, long hours, crashing at the weekend. But what we realise is that people who have long-term pain can't get away as much with this boom bust cycle. Unfortunately, it tends to have some downstream consequences for you that make life even harder than it already is. It's important to say that not everyone we meet is in this boom bust cycle. Some people, you can see the blue line at the top here, some people just push all the time. Just keep on pushing. They don't offer themselves, or they don't allow themselves, or there isn't the chance to have these times of downtime. Other people, you can see the yellow line at the bottom. Other people have pulled their activities right back to a much lower level than they were doing previously. Some people say they see a bit of themselves in all of those graphs, and that's okay. What's driving it? This is a conversation that we have in the group about what is stoking, what is driving you into this boom bust pattern. We quickly highlight some of the emotions, might be frustration, anger. There are strong thoughts. People often use the word burden. They don't want to be a burden. They feel they're a burden. They feel lazy. They feel that if they don't get it done now, it's not going to happen. There are often strong beliefs that maybe you haven't thought about. Did your family ever have expressions like, oh, sorry, beliefs in terms of I'm not good at asking for help? And there's often some family sayings, expressions like, once I've started, I must finish. If a job's worth doing, it's worth doing well. Or people say to themselves things like, I'll rest when the jobs are done. In a way, they drive themselves to earn that rest, and that's also very common. People often share that they maybe have standards for themselves, and these are often high standards. And they do admit frequently that they find that no one else does it as well as they do, so they tend to get on and do it. And quickly we ascertain that when we think of pacing, people tend to think of the physical activity. What is it? How demanding is it? How much do I do? Have I overdone? And actually, what we want to start looking at today is that pacing and any activity that we do has a very mind body connection to it. It isn't only physical. And this is what we find, unfortunately. People are often working so hard to go about their life and they're in this boom bust cycle. And unfortunately, despite your best efforts, you're often on this downward curve. As time's going by, you're less able to do things. You're deconditioning, unfortunately, even though you're working hard and pushing on to keep going. And that's the real unjustness of this, is that you're unfortunately often deconditioning. People frequently tell us they can do less now than they could a year ago or 2 years ago or 5 years ago. So what have we started at COPE already? We've introduced the idea of setting a baseline, finding a manageable amount. We've introduced that with the exercise aspect. Find that baseline, find something that feels manageable for today, but also for the next 24, 48 hours, because a lot of people say, I pay for it later. So this baseline needs to be a toe in the water, a manageable amount. And then we really slowly and steadily build up. You can see the blue line on that staircase, taking small, steady steps, allowing time for our body to change. And we also introduce the ideas of how you go about activity, helping yourself to be kinder, more gentle, more compassionate, more connected to your body as you move and go about your activities. So some of the pacing strategies that we get you to look at, first of all, we say it's important to take stock, to actually look at what you do of a week, your activities, your demands, the life that you lead. And it's important to grade activities. Most of us tend to grade it in terms of physical. How demanding is it? How much does it ask of me? But actually, we're going to encourage you to grade it from a cognitive. How much thinking power does it take from me? Or how much emotional energy and power does it take? A phone call to a friend for one person might be energizing. For somebody else, that's demanding. And it's important to recognize each activity that we do has a physical, cognitive, a thinking, and an emotional cost to it. Then we encourage you to think about your day. You can see we've split the day up here into mornings and afternoons and evenings. Think about those activities, the ones that are demanding, the red ones, the ones that are not so demanding, the amber ones, and the ones that are restorative, the ones that re-energize you, refresh you. They're the green activities. And we would then encourage you to think about your days and to think about your weeks. You can see here that there's a busy, packed, demanding Saturday coming up. So someone would intentionally put around that day some green activities in order to refresh and restore themselves after that demanding day. Some people decide, and we really support it, to prioritize putting in the green activities early in their day. It's tempting, as you can see on Monday, to get the difficult things done and then to reward ourselves with the things that are green and refreshing. How about putting some of those green activities in early? That might be 5 minutes of listening to a song. It might be a few minutes of a body scan or a mindfulness app. These are the pacing strategies that are mentioned in your booklet. The section is on page 25 to 27. We'll go through them now. And what we're encouraging people to do when we go through them is to think about which one has really struck a chord with you. Which one have you thought, actually, that might help me? I think that might be a place for me to start. So the ones in purple on the left-hand side, they're more what we would call the psychological aspects. Noticing your inner voice. Many people admit that they are actually very self-critical, and what they ask of themselves and the way they speak to themselves isn't the way they would speak to a friend or a loved one. We encourage you to stop the autopilot, but actually the first thing to do is recognize when are you in autopilot? When are you just plowing on, not stopping to consider, how do I feel? What do I need? Do I need to do something now that would be different for me? So are you able to notice when you get into that autopilot zone? And can you acknowledge? And the first step will be awareness and acknowledging when you're tending to do it. The word stop is quite dramatic. I think probably I need to adjust that to say awareness. Number 3 on that left-hand side talks about prioritizing, planning, problem solving. The P's are very important with pacing. Prioritizing things that do need to be done, but also prioritizing things that are restorative for you. Those green tasks, and hopefully as you spend time with us at COPE, you'll be learning more about what are the things that your system finds calming, soothing, restoring. It's not the same for everybody. Also talking about communicating your needs, and within this comes asking for help and saying no. People find it very difficult. When we meet them, they often say they find asking for help or saying no very difficult. If this is something you're going to think about putting some changes in place, we would encourage you to start with an ask or start with a saying no to something that doesn't feel too threatening. Don't go launching straight in with the most conflicting situation you can think of and expect yourself to do it differently. That will only dial up your threat system. Coming on to the grey tasks, these are a little bit more in the physical side of things. How can you break up a task into a manageable chunk? We find that a lot of people are doing this already before they come to COPE. They say, well, I don't now clean the house from top to toe. I could never do that, they say, but I've learned to do little bits of each task. Alternating task, this might be a new one. When you're doing something, let's take gardening. If you're doing something that's more demanding physically, you might alternate it with something that might involve you sitting down and using your arms, maybe to do some potting out or some seedlings or something like that. So you are alternating hard tasks with tasks that feel less demanding, or tasks that use a different part of your body. Looking to how do we, again, become aware of this boom bust, and how do we try and break that cycle a little bit? Slowing it down. Have you tried? Have you tried slowing the pace? It might feel like you're not going to get it done. We often find people just want to push through quickly, get the job done, and then have the rest that they've rewarded themselves with. Maybe have a go at doing the tasks slower. It might take longer, but it might lessen that crash the other side. So taking more breaks. Many people come back to us and say that they felt, when we suggested this, that if they slowed it down and took more breaks, they felt like they'd never get jobs done. And when people try it, they often come back and say, actually, when I went about it slower and I planned for my breaks, maybe use an alarm clock, and when the alarm goes off, give yourself the break. It might be 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, but put in place those breaks and allow longer for the task. Often people come back and say they actually get more done. Breathe. How many times do we get into that threat mode and hold our breath? How can we become more aware of keeping breathing as we do the tasks? Using relaxation and mindfulness techniques that you've been learning here before, during, and after the tasks. And an important bit in the green box here really is to know your limits and to accept your limits. This might be where you're at now. It doesn't mean where you're at forever. It's just that we've got to find a start point where your mind and body feel connected, and it's where you are at. So if you turn to your manuals on page 26 and write down one of those strategies that you will try this week. As we say, pick one that feels achievable. Because if you pick a task that you feel you're going to be able to manage, that will help your soothing system. If you overreach and over ask of yourself and then you don't do it, that may set you up to feel like you failed or not succeeded. And that will only dial up your threat system. So if we look at some of the barriers, what makes pacing difficult? Most people that we talk about pacing with say the concept of pacing is relatively straightforward. They get it. Doing it is phenomenally difficult. And that, I think, is something that we see a lot from the people who we support through COPE. Why is it difficult? Let's start at the top. Part of our identity gets caught up in it. What I do is who I am. I'm a busy person. I get things done. I'm the person everyone goes to. A lot of the time, who we are is linked to what we do. The next box, if we go around to the right, says injustice. The strong emotions of anger and frustration, understandable. I shouldn't have to make these changes. I shouldn't be like this at 25, 35, 45. My peers aren't like this. Why am I? They're difficult things, that they are often strong. They're a big part of what can be a barrier to pacing. Fear. I can't do things differently. Even though it doesn't feel like it's working for me, it can provoke anxiety at the thought of making changes. Others will judge you. We spoke earlier about people feeling a burden or feeling lazy. Moving around to negative self-talk, we spoke about this, the laziness, guilt, I feel useless. They are very strong and very critical emotions to be feeling and words to be speaking over ourselves. Remember, our body is always listening. The words that we use will either be dialing up threat or offering that compassion soothing system. Acceptance that pacing is necessary to try and soften that roller coaster of a ride. Less boom, less bust, a bit more of a softer curve. This was a patient who used this lovely expression when she said she realized how disconnected her mind and body were. She said, my brain keeps writing a check that my body can't cash. I keep asking or I keep pushing myself to do things that are not where I'm at right now, physically, emotionally, cognitively. And it's really important to be thinking to how do we bring those things in line with each other. So really the key to pacing well is psychological flexibility. The ability to look at your identity and say, well, I might not be exactly who I was, but can I be me in new and different ways? Acknowledging the injustice, allowing yourself to feel those strong feelings that you have, because they are true, and there are likely many injustices about the challenges that you face that others don't when you're living with long-term pain and other conditions. Focus your energy on what you can control. It's very common that there's a lot of life that's out of our control, but there are bits that are within it. And we would encourage you to go and find those chinks, find those little slithers of opportunity of things that you can control and things that you can do differently. Fear, again, acknowledging the fear, but making small changes. This will stop your threat system going into overdrive. A small little change, showing yourself the love and care you so willingly show to others. Looking at your self-talk, and maybe it might help you to imagine that you were saying this to a friend, or that you're asking the advice. What would the COPE team or a friend say to me? Would they talk to me in the way that I am? And acceptance, that's part of self-compassion and mindfulness, are key to this. And this will be a whole topic that is again discussed at COPE. So I think the summary slides is that activity pacing is relatively simple to understand, but not easy to do. Be kind to yourself. What we find is that the people, when they come back at 3 months and 9 months, the people that have wrestled, and I use that word intentionally because I think you have to wrestle with the difficulties and challenges of putting pacing into your life. The people that have stuck with it, that have made little small changes and been consistent at building things up over time, they seem to make the most progress, or they make significant progress. Remember, the minute you do anything different, it's going to feel unnatural. When we buy a new pair of slippers, we don't like the feel of them, and we're tempted to go back to the old, comfortable, battered ones. But actually, there's power in leaning into doing it differently and acknowledging that it might feel unnatural and difficult to begin with. The last slide is to acknowledge that a lot of people find it difficult to know what their needs are and to ask or to get their needs met. In this box here on the left, equality is where all 3 children have been given one box to try and see over the fence to see the match. But equity, getting what you need, is different. The man in the yellow trousers, he doesn't actually need a box because he can see over the fence anyway. The chap in the red t-shirt and green shorts, he needs one box, and now he can see over the fence. The little chap in the purple and blue, he needs two boxes. Our needs are different, and it's okay to have our needs met. We are not all the same, and we don't all have the same needs. So I hope this has been helpful. As I say, page 25 to 27 in your manual. Thank you.